Let's take a trip back in time to the year 2000. Life felt simple. The world moved at a slower pace, and the biggest decisions of the day were often about what to have for dinner or which movie to rent from the local video store. There was a sense of comfort in the routines, a feeling that tomorrow would look much like today. You could show up at an airport just 30 minutes before your flight, no frantic rushing, no endless lines. There was no need to take off your shoes or empty your pockets. Security was a quick wave and a smile, not a gauntlet of scanners and pat-downs. Your family could walk you right to the gate, wave goodbye, and maybe even shed a tear as you disappeared down the jetway. Goodbyes were personal, not hurried, and reunions happened right at the arrival gate, not in a crowded baggage claim. The biggest political scandal was about a president's personal life, not a global war. The news cycle was dominated by gossip and intrigue, not by fear or uncertainty. The world's problems felt distant, and the headlines rarely hinted at the seismic shifts to come. The tallest buildings in New York were just symbols of commerce, not targets. The World Trade Center was a place of business, a backdrop for movies, and a symbol of ambition, not a site of tragedy. We worried about dial-up internet speeds, the screeching sound of a modem connecting, and whether someone would pick up the phone and disconnect us from the web. The internet was a novelty, not a necessity, and social media was just a glimmer on the horizon. And if we had remembered to feed our Tamagotchi, our biggest digital responsibility was keeping a pixelated pet alive, not curating an online persona or worrying about cyber threats. Homeland Security wasn't a cabinet-level department, it was just a phrase, rarely mentioned in daily conversation. The idea of terrorism on American soil seemed remote, almost unthinkable. We were living in the final, peaceful moments of an era, unaware of the turbulence ahead. Family dinners were routine, and the biggest worry was getting home before the streetlights came on. The world felt predictable, stable, and safe. Parks were full of laughter, streets echoed with the sound of children playing, and the future seemed bright and open. We were like a child who had never touched a hot stove, innocent, unscarred, and blissfully unaware of the dangers that could suddenly appear. The world before September 11, 2001, wasn't a utopia, but it operated on different assumptions. We trusted in the ordinary, believed in the safety of our routines, and rarely questioned the security of our daily lives. You could leave your front door unlocked, trust your neighbors, and expect that the world outside your window would remain unchanged. Community meant knowing the people next door, not just following them online. And the sky was just the sky, a vast blue canvas for daydreams, not a source of anxiety or fear. We looked up and saw only possibilities, not threats. That world ended abruptly on a sunny Tuesday morning. The ordinary became extraordinary in the worst possible way, and the world we knew was changed forever in a matter of hours. We were passengers on a smooth flight, sipping our drinks with no idea of the turbulence ahead. The sense of safety we took for granted was about to be shattered, replaced by a new reality of uncertainty and vigilance. The sheer shock was the key. We had no real understanding of what was to come. In those moments, as we watched the news in disbelief, we realized that the world had changed, and that innocence, once lost, could never be fully regained. September 11, 2001, began as an ordinary Tuesday. The city of New York was waking up, the streets alive with the familiar rhythm of daily life. People hurried to catch subways, grabbed coffee from corner carts, and exchanged greetings with neighbors. It was a day like any other, filled with the promise and routine of a late summer morning. The sky over the East Coast was a brilliant, cloudless blue, a perfect backdrop for the bustling city below. The weather was so clear that morning, it seemed as if nothing could go wrong. The sunlight glinted off the glass towers, and the air was crisp with the energy of a city in motion. People were commuting to work, kids were in school, and the city pulsed with its usual energy. Office workers settled into their desks, teachers greeted their students, and parents kissed their children goodbye, never imagining that this day would be any different from the last. Then, at 8:46 a.m., everything changed. An American Airlines flight, hijacked by terrorists, slammed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. The impact sent shockwaves through the city, and confusion rippled across the nation. News anchors scrambled to make sense of the chaos, speculating that it might have been a terrible accident. Television screens across the country flickered with images of smoke pouring from the tower, as millions watched in disbelief. But at 9:03 a.m., a second plane crashed into the South Tower. In that instant, it became clear, this was no accident. This was a coordinated attack, unfolding live before the eyes of the world. The images were surreal, like scenes from a Hollywood disaster movie, but this was real life. People on the streets stared up in horror while others crowded around televisions, struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what was happening. At 9:37 a.m., the horror spread beyond New York. Another hijacked plane crashed into the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., striking at the heart of America's military command and deepening the sense of national crisis. In response, all air traffic across the United States was grounded for the first time in history. Airports fell silent, and the skies emptied as the nation braced for what might come next. Meanwhile, a fourth plane, United Airlines Flight 93, was hijacked. Passengers on board learned of the other attacks and made a courageous decision. They fought back against the hijackers, sacrificing their own lives to prevent further destruction. The plane crashed into a field in Pennsylvania, averting another possible catastrophe. At 9:59 a.m., the unthinkable happened. The South Tower collapsed in a massive cloud of dust and debris, sending people running for their lives. The North Tower followed at 10:28 a.m., its fall marking the end of an era and the loss of a symbol recognized around the world. Nearly 3,000 lives were extinguished in a matter of hours: mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, friends, and colleagues. Each name a story, each loss a heartbreak that rippled through families and communities. These weren't just buildings, they were places full of people with dreams, with families, with futures that were stolen in an instant. The World Trade Center was a crossroads of the world, and its destruction left a void that could never truly be filled. On a perfectly normal Tuesday, the world as we knew it crumbled. The streets of Lower Manhattan, once so full of life, were now coated in ash and silence, as New Yorkers tried to process the unimaginable. The iconic New York City skyline was irrevocably changed. The Twin Towers, once a symbol of ambition and hope, were gone, leaving behind only memories and a scar on the city's heart. The country, and the world, was reeling. The unthinkable had happened, and nothing would ever be the same. In the days that followed, people came together in grief and solidarity, united by loss and the hope for healing in the face of tragedy. The aftermath of the attacks was a scene of stunned silence worldwide. In cities and towns across the globe, people gathered in public spaces, their faces etched with disbelief and sorrow. The usual hum of daily life faded into a heavy, almost tangible quiet, as millions tried to process the enormity of what had just happened. The entire planet watched the same event unfold, live on television. News channels replayed the images over and over, each broadcast deepening the collective shock. The world stopped, stock markets closed, their trading floors eerily empty. Flights were grounded, airports deserted, sports games were canceled, stadiums left silent as if the world itself was holding its breath. Global leaders condemned the attacks and offered solidarity. Across continents, presidents, prime ministers, and monarchs addressed their nations, expressing grief and pledging support. Iconic landmarks from Paris to Sydney were illuminated in the colors of the American flag, a visual symbol of unity in the face of tragedy. The famous French newspaper Le Monde ran a headline, "Nous sommes tous Américains," "We are all Americans." Newspapers around the world echoed this sentiment, their front pages filled with messages of empathy and shared pain. Embassies were flooded with flowers, candles, and messages of condolence. Strangers stood side by side, leaving handwritten notes, national flags, and heartfelt tributes, creating spontaneous memorials that grew by the hour. People recognized the human tragedy above all else. Across borders and beliefs, there was a surge of compassion, interfaith gatherings, moments of silence, and acts of kindness that transcended language and nationality. The world grieved for the individuals, the families, and the shattered sense of safety. Candlelight vigils lit up the night as communities came together to mourn, to comfort, and to remember those lost. Beneath the unity, a sense of unease grew. People clung to loved ones, uncertain about what the future might hold. Their anxiety reflected in worried glances and hushed conversations. The shock gave way to questions. Who did this? Why? What happens next? Newsrooms buzzed with speculation, and experts tried to make sense of the chaos as the world demanded answers. This mix of emotions, grief, fear, solidarity, and uncertainty, set the stage for dramatic changes that followed. The world would never be the same, as nations braced for a new era shaped by the events of that day. Before 9/11s, the most stressful part of flying was worrying about a middle seat. After 9/11s, the airport became a gauntlet of suspicion. We were introduced to TSA, liquid restrictions, full-body scanners, shoes off, laptops out under watchful eyes. Security measures spread beyond airports, concrete barriers appeared around government buildings and corporate headquarters. Public spaces became less accessible. We accepted these measures to feel safe. The fear of another attack made inconvenience seem a small price. Our language changed, soft targets, threat levels. We became a society constantly looking over its shoulder. Some measures felt like security theater, designed to make us feel safer. We traded freedom and convenience for a feeling of security. After 9/11, governments expanded state power for national security. The USA Patriot Act gave agencies sweeping new powers. Surveillance, data collection, and monitoring increased with less oversight. Privacy became an obstacle to security. Globally, similar anti-terror laws were passed. Massive data hoovering programs were created. Whistleblowers like Edward Snowden revealed the scale of surveillance. Governments collected data on everyone, not just suspected terrorists. We built a permanent infrastructure of mass surveillance. Before 9/11, the internet was a digital playground. The attacks changed that forever. The internet became a battlefield for counterterrorism. Digital surveillance went into overdrive. Every online action became a potential data point. Corporate data collection blurred with government surveillance. The internet shaped public opinion about the war on terror. It allowed for rapid spread of information and misinformation. The internet grew up fast, becoming a powerful, contested space. 9/11 created a pervasive culture of fear. The randomness of the violence made the threat feel personal. Fear was amplified by politicians and media. We became more suspicious of strangers. The fear of terrorism overshadowed more mundane threats. We poured resources into fighting terrorism, ignoring deadlier risks. The culture of fear made us more willing to give up freedoms. The question remains, has fear made us safer, or just more afraid? The 24/7 news cycle was supercharged by 9/11. Cable news channels captured the nation's attention. A new model for news emerged, high stakes, emotional, focused on a single story. The media environment became intensely politicized. News became about winning political arguments. We sorted into information bubbles, reinforcing existing beliefs. The internet supercharged this trend. Public discourse became fragmented. Trust in traditional media plummeted. We live in a media world defined by outrage, division, and distrust. In 2025, we live in a world shaped by 9/11. Are we safer? Yes, but at a steep price. We've traded privacy and convenience for partial safety. The legacy is in security lines, CCTV cameras, and political divisions. We prevented another 9/11s but got endless wars and mass surveillance. The challenge is to reclaim lost ground, ensure powerful tools are used responsibly, push back against fear and rebuild trust. September 11th echoes in our politics, technology, and routines. The price of safety is a question we must answer repeatedly.